the nature of the mind is to jump around. There's a reason that even in our scriptures it is called the monkey mind. It is the nature of the mind. It's like saying, I've got this puppy dog, could somebody please make it sit still? Or I've got this 2 or 3-year-old toddler, could somebody please make them sit still? It is the nature. You would worry if you had a 2-year-old who just sat still. Right? I mean, the doctors would say, let's run some tests. You know, this is not actually normal. If you got a new puppy and the puppy just sat there, you'd say, maybe I got a, defective puppy. Maybe there's something wrong with the puppy. Because we understand their nature is to run around. And that is the nature of the mind. Now, like a puppy, the mind can be trained. Like a young toddler, as you work with the mind, it grows. A 2-year-old won't sit still, but a 22-year-old will. Luckily, we don't have to wait 20 years for the mind to mature and blossom. You can work with it. But understand that that is the nature of the mind, so you don't feel like you've got a defective mind or there's some problem with your mind. That is the nature of the mind. How do you work with it? Number 1, mantra. Fantastic, fantastic tool. Number 1, if it's a Sanskrit mantra, if it's a Vedic mantra, you've actually got the power of the reverberation of that sound in you that has its own power. But also, even at the bare minimum, what the mantra does is it brings all of the mind into one place. Like if you have your puppy running around and you give it a bone, you give it one thing to do. It'll actually stay in one place for a while as long as it's got the bone or a toy. At the most basic level, the mantra is that for the mind. But again, it's also a lot more powerful than that. Because it's actually also the science of sound. So you get a lot more benefits from a mantra, but at the bare minimum you're getting one place to hook the mind in. Number 2, practice meditation. It's very difficult and nearly impossible to bring a practice of quieting the mind in our daily life if we're not having a seated practice in which we are working exclusively on the mind. See, when I meditate, I'm not worried about what my arms are doing or my legs are doing or getting my lunch into my mouth and eating it. I'm not worried about speaking on the phone or working on a computer. I'm not worried about anything else. I don't have to walk down the street and make sure I don't trip. I have no other responsibilities. Body is still. Not eating, not talking, not even looking. My eyes are closed. So it gives us that space to work exclusively with the mind. And what that does is it starts building what I call the mind muscle. Biologically, biochemically, the brain is not actually a muscle, like it's not made from the same fibers that muscles are made from, but it works very much like a muscle. Exactly what you teach it to do, exactly what you train it to do, exactly what you do a lot of, is what it's going to become very, very good at. Another really good practice is silence. Now it's interesting because in silence, it's only our mouth that is silent and you're talking about what's going on in the brain. But I've noticed something really interesting, which is at least half, if not more, of the things I think are essentially preparing for conversations I'm going to have, or I'm noticing something so that I can then comment on it, or tell somebody about it, or do something about it. Oh, yeah, right, I've got to leave that one a message. Oh, wait, I have to tell this person that. Or, oh, that was so funny, God, I'm going to call this person right away and we'll laugh together. A huge percentage of what we think is actually in preparation for something we're going to say. But if you're in silence, and so you know, neither are you going to comment on it to that person, nor are you going to call someone else and tell them about it, the mind actually starts to quiet down a lot. The mind starts to realize there's no point of this, because by the time I come out of silence, this is no longer going to be so interesting. The comment will not be funny or pertinent or of any value 5 hours later or 2 days later or a week later. It's a kind of in-the-moment thing, and if you're not going to say it in the moment, forget it. To go back to somebody, half a day later and say, that thing you said earlier today, well, here's my comment. Life has moved on. You'd feel childish. They would think you were childish. So by going into a practice of silence, I have found that actually the mind automatically quiets a lot. In the times that I've had the blessing to go into some days strewn together of silence, even though it was only the lips, the mind automatically actually became a lot quieter. So it's a beautiful practice, whether it's a few hours a day a week, a few days at the turn of a season, a few days a month, kind of whatever your schedule will allow. But it's a really, really beautiful and powerful practice.